Senator Newman. Senator Ruff. Senator Wagner. Senator McDougal. Senator Vogel. Senator Carrico. Senator Obenshain. Senator Parker. Senator Donovan. Senator Stewart. Senator Dance. Senator Hayner. Senator Norman. Here. Carry up quorum.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Initially, I'd like to welcome all of our guests and say that you really ought to get a light that this is a highlight for Sunday afternoon. But welcome. We're delighted to have you. Initially, I'd like to thank all of the members of the Senate Finance Committee for the hard work that they've undertaken during this session. Once again, each of our subcommittees has spent an extraordinary number of hours deliberating and making careful choices about how best to use the limited resources that we have this year. Our primary task this year was to amend what I thought was an excellent budget that we adopted last year. And we were having to make these amendments as a result of the well-publicized downturn in revenues. Each subcommittee carefully scrutinized the strategies proposed to address this shortfall, as well as any discretionary spending items that are in the budget as introduced. In doing so, we were able to redirect the resources to the top priorities of this committee. And those top priorities were namely supporting mental health programs, avoiding spending cuts for public education and safety net programs, and very importantly, providing an overdue pay raise for all state employees and teachers who still lag behind the private sector. Way back in the fall, we signaled at our annual meeting in Blacksburg that we would try our best to restore the compensation package deferred when the triggers were not met by the revenues in the forecast. And we have done that. It is simply good business sense that an enterprise as broad and complex as state government should make all the efforts that it possibly can to both attract and retain a talented workforce. Our citizens rely each and every day on the men and women who serve the Commonwealth as our dedicated state employees. With our evaluation of the proposed spending and resources, we were able to redirect the proposed one-time bonus funding toward an ongoing pay increase for all state employees, teachers, and state-supported local employees. Our recommendations have included a 3% increase for state classified employees. For our colleges and universities, we propose funding a 2% increase for faculty, which the institutions may allocate based on their individual pay plans. For our public school teachers, we're providing the state share of a 2% increase and a 2% for the state-supported local employees. Our subcommittee chairs will share some more of the details with you in just a moment. Regarding the resources assumed in our budget recommendations, the revenue forecast remains conservative, reflecting modest growth in the 3% range for both this year and for next year. Adjustment to the resources identified by our committee reflect the impact of legislation, balances transferred to the general fund, and a revised ABC forecast. We also closely examined the estimate assumed in the budget related to the tax amnesty program. Based on a review of prior amnesty programs, combined with the detailed analysis of the assumptions, we recommended taking the estimate of $90.8 million, or about $31 million above the collections assumed in the budget. That's due to the extraordinary patron carrying the bill. This incremental one-time amount, along with the additional one-time resources, will set aside about $40 million in revenue reserve. Rather than programming these resources into ongoing spending, the revenue reserve can serve as a buffer should the fiscal year 2018 revenues fail to meet the forecast. If it is not needed for that purpose, it can then be used next year as we develop our biennial budget. This committee believes that this is the most fiscally prudent use of these resources and a very conservative way to address the volatility in revenue forecasting in light of the unknown direction of the federal budget. My colleague, Senator Hanger, is now going to provide some of the specifics of the committee budget recommendations, and I just want to thank him for his collegiality and his tolerance of my sometimes rather testy personality.
Thank you, Senator Norman. I understood all of that except that reference to an extraordinary legislator.
Well, my mother told me never to brag, but my mom was never in politics.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. The budget issues before us this year were not dramatically different from those that we were confronted with last year, namely addressing employee compensation and providing support for public safety, education, and mental health issues. The only difference is that this year we had less time and less money with which to deal with them. I echo Senator Norman's comments that compensation was indeed a top priority for the committee this year. From the aide who assists our loved one in the state hospital to the trooper who protects our family on the dark highway, and the educator who invents the future of the Commonwealth. Each is deserving of our support and appreciation. We are pleased to be able to restore the compensation package that was so strongly supported last year. In addition to the salary increases noted by Senator Norman, our recommendations include funding to raise the starting salary for state troopers and help them further address compression issues in the ranks. We also support special salary actions for sheriffs and clerks and career development for constitutional officers. In addition, we recommend funding to enhance the salaries of selected high turnover positions, many of which are among the very lowest paid jobs in state government, in our state mental health and intellectual developmental disability facilities. In the area of health and human resources, our recommendations endorse and enhance the funding proposed for mental health. These initiatives will continue our efforts to address the challenges across the spectrum of mental health needs. In public education, our focus was on avoiding across-the-board budget reductions. As previously noted, we recommend the state share of a 2% increase for teachers, and we recommend one-time funding for those school divisions, primarily in the South Side and Southwest, that are seeing significant enrollment loss this school year. Focusing our resources on compensation limited our ability to address other areas of concern. We were unable to reduce or eliminate cuts in most state agencies and for our colleges and universities, or address many other unmet needs. These are but a few highlights of the Finance Committee's budget recommendations. We will hear more detail from the chair of our respective subcommittees. I'd like to briefly comment on the proposed creation of a revenue reserve. While it's tempting to spend every additional dollar identified, this reserve, which we have funded to the $40 million this year, will help protect the priorities against potential revenue shortfalls and reduce our reliance on the rainy day fund. Hopefully, the economy will outperform our conservative forecasts so that we may adequately address the unmet needs identified through this budget tightening process when we develop our next two-year budget. Before we turn to the subcommittee reports, I wish to thank our co-chairman, Senator Norman, and each member of this committee for an outstanding job working with our excellent staff, bringing together our budget recommendations. The subcommittee members are willing to ask tough questions, spend late nights going over spreadsheets about every spending decision, and work together to build a consensus as they develop their recommendations.
Before we start to receive the subcommittee reports, I want to announce a historical moment that today represents. Today is Senator Saslaw's 91st birthday.
You don't laugh, he ain't far off.
There are some that says he was at Jamestown on July the 30th in 1619, but I know that's a slight exaggeration. With that,
Mr. Chairman, I reminded the chairman and some other members here and staff that what Bob Hope once said, that you know you're getting old when the candles cost more than the cake.
Speaking of cake, Senator Vogel, if you would be so kind to share with us the General Government and Technology Subcommittee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairs and members of the committee. I enjoyed my time with you and the spreadsheets. And thank you especially, Senator Hanger, for your time on the spreadsheets in my committee, and happy birthday. Okay, so at the outset, I have to offer a special thanks to the folks who suffered with us, Adam Rossitelli and Dick Hickman and Jason Powell, for all of their hard work. Without them, this obviously wouldn't be before you today. For starters, our subcommittee reviewed the provisions of the Senate Bill 900 as introduced, and for those portions of the budget that fall under the subcommittee on general government and technology. While the area of general government is expansive and touches on several secretariats and dozens of agencies, the primary and overarching objective this year was to address employee compensation. We believe we have achieved that objective by endorsing the 3% pay increase for state employees, the largest in 9 years, while also proposing a significant investment in our state police, additional funding for local sheriffs and constitutional officers, and other state-supported local employees. In this very brief report, I'd like to focus on some of the key issues in each of the departments of our subcommittee. Under the legislative department, we're addressing local fiscal stress through language directing the Auditor of Public Accounts to establish a work group to examine early warning indicators to help identify localities that may be experiencing fiscal distress. In addition, we are recommending language to instruct certified public accountants conducting local independent audits to notify local governing bodies and the Commonwealth through official written communication when significant financial or internal control deficiencies are identified. Under the Judicial Department, among the issues that we examined is the current pay structure and duties of the clerks and deputy clerks of the Commonwealth District Courts. The issue of compensation for these employees has been ongoing for several years. You will recall the introduced budget included $2.5 million the second year to address salary issues in this area. While this is a sizable investment in our clerks, upon further consideration of their responsibilities and of the continued pay disparity with their circuit court counterparts, we concluded that a more substantial salary action was definitely warranted. Therefore, the subcommittee recommends that $3.5 million in the second year for compensation for the district court deputy clerks be added. We further recommend that this be accomplished based on a plan to be approved by the Executive Secretary of the Supreme Court and approved by the Committee on District Courts. For the Compensation Board, we're recommending the salary compression plan for sheriff's offices and regional jails contained in the budget as introduced. In addition, we support funding contained within the introduced budget for all qualified constitutional officers to participate in career development programs to encourage furthering their education, obtaining additional accreditations, and enhancing their skills. These programs, which the Senate has supported in the past, provide salary supplements for constitutional officers who meet certain well-defined performance and educational requirements, which should have a positive impact on constitutional officers' quality of work and overall job performance. Employee compensation. In this area, there was consensus among the committee that the 1.5% bonus effective December 17th that was included in the governor's introduced budget was an insufficient acknowledgement of the outstanding work performed by our state employees. Given that, we are proposing a 3% pay increase for state employees, effective July 10th, 2017, which will be reflected in their August 1st pay. Adjusting for the 5-for-5 pay adjustment in 2012, this represents the largest increase in employee-based pay since 2008. For state-supported local employees, we are recommending a 2% salary increase. Many in this group are also the beneficiaries of some of the targeted pay initiatives we've proposed, including sheriff's salary compression funding of $8.7 million and career development funding of $3.9 million. We're also recommending several targeted pay initiatives for certain employee groups that continue to experience significant problems with both recruitment and retention. As you're aware, below market pay and high turnover can result in difficulty attracting and retaining employees, which can compromise morale, jeopardize service delivery, and cost the state money in terms of continual re-recruitment and training costs. These issues occur in some of the most critical areas of state government, such as our mental health and intellectual disability centers. Because of this, the subcommittee is proposing $2.5 million to provide a 4% salary adjustment for certain high turnover positions in our mental health facilities. These include nurses and direct care associates who are at the front line of these service providers in these settings. This pay initiative is in addition to the 3% salary adjustment for state employees that I mentioned before. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our state police as another critical area for whom recruitment and retention issues have become a real concern. After reviewing the responsibilities and hiring requirements of these sworn staff, as well as the existing compensation structure relative to other state and local enforcement agencies, the subcommittee is recommending $14.3 million in funding for a comprehensive salary initiative. This initiative will include raising the starting salary of sworn employees from its current $36,207 to $43,000, which will make it competitive with most law enforcement agencies throughout the Commonwealth and ensure that the state police can continue to attract the most qualified applicants for the job. In addition, the recommended funding will allow for an adjustment of base pay for other longer tenured sworn staff at levels relative to the adjusted starting pay and consistent with each officer's position and rank. This comprehensive pay initiative will position the Department of State Police well in terms of attracting and retaining highly productive and dedicated law enforcement professionals. This pay initiative is in addition to the 3% base salary adjustment for state employees. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your attention, and this completes the report of the General Government and Technology Subcommittee, and with that, I would move the adoption of the subcommittee report.
Senator Vogel, thank you very much for the extraordinary hard work that your subcommittee did and the recognition of the importance and the compensation that our state employees do. Thank you very much. This motion that the General Government and Technology Subcommittee report be accepted. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the next committee is addressed. And next we will hear from Senator McDougal on public safety, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I thought the most interesting thing today was going to be my report, only to learn that Senator Sasslaw is only 91 years old. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the Public Safety Subcommittee, I think, worked exceedingly hard, and we had an exceedingly difficult task. And I want to thank each of the committee members for putting the time in prior to session even beginning, and certainly our staff of Dick Hickman, who has been around forever and done a tremendous job this year, and Adam pinching in when we had some challenges. In addition to Jason and April, we really, I think, came together as a team and have a very reasonable and sensible report. Mr. Chairman, we reviewed the budgets of the Office of Public and Homeland Security and the Office of Veterans and Defense Affairs, and there are relatively few budget amendments this year, as we were recommending little additional spending. In fact, we did focus on this year addressing employee compensation, particularly state troopers and our sheriff's deputies, and accordingly, we made some very difficult decisions, and there will be very little new spending in many of these areas, unless absolutely essential to accomplish the goals. Mr. Chairman, I would be remiss if I did not mention that we spent a lot of time last year dealing with the Department of Juvenile Justice, and we're continuing to move forward those plans to close one facility, Beaumont Juvenile Correctional Facility in Powhatan, and we're also continuing to move forward with the construction of a smaller, new focus type facility in Chesapeake. Mr. Chairman, we are also pleased to report that after there was much study and review of the former Department of Veterans Services, it is in the Department of Veterans Services and former Wounded Warrior Program, we are endorsing the concept of having it transformed into the Virginia Veteran and Family Support Services Program, and we've implemented many of the recommendations that the JLARC study presented. Many of those will move employees in the field currently working with community services boards into state services under the Department of Veteran Services to improve coordination and efficiency. Mr. Chairman, we also spent a substantive amount of time looking at the jails and inmates, and as we reviewed the mental health portion of the budget that was in the public safety silo, we recommended that that be redirected to providing more direct mental health services and encouraging moving more mentally ill individuals out of jails whenever possible. Mr. Chairman, we did also endorse the 2 pieces of legislation and incorporated that into our budget recommendations that would require the same screening document for all jails. About half of the jails in Virginia are using the screening document, and this would require all jails to use one, and it be the same document. But, Mr. Chairman, as we looked at that, we also became somewhat concerned that after a screening program, that there needed to be a place where individuals that were presenting with significant mental illness have the ability to be diverted from a jail facility. And as a result, we are directing that the Secretary of Public Safety and the Secretary of Health and Human Services conduct a joint review to look into a regional treatment facility for the mentally ill in jails. And Mr. Chairman, we are asking that they specifically look at Pumanson Regional Jail, which is located on the grounds of AP Hill and is scheduled to be closing this year. We think that there might be some synergies that can be developed at an economically beneficial direction for the Commonwealth. Mr. Chairman, I would say that there are many other areas that we defer compensation, defer taking action for new spending, but we do recognize that training standards and curriculum for community policing need to be updated, and we're asking Department of Criminal Justice Services to begin laying the groundwork so we can tackle that challenge next biennium. We're also going to need to tackle the challenges in the Virginia regional and local law enforcement training academies, and that is another project that we think next biennium will bring us the opportunity to address. Finally, Mr. Chairman, in one of the major substantive areas, medical costs in the Department of Corrections continue to be rising sharply. There are a multitude of reasons for that, but we think a continued and maybe even more extensive review of this area by the subcommittee is going to be essential in tackling those costs, and we've included language directing the Department of Corrections to review the cost experience of the highest cost inmates because they is disproportionate to the entire population, and seek and identify strategies to manage their care and costs better. We also included language to direct the Department of Corrections to look at the increased use of technology as they continue to tackle substantive budget challenges going forward. Finally, Mr. Chairman, all of our law enforcement correctional agencies have been facing huge challenges, some of them financial, but many of them are in the recruiting and retaining best people in the field. That's why the subcommittee recommended that every possible dollar of new funding be reallocated to enhancing public safety employee compensation, including the starting pay and addressing compression of our state troopers, and, Mr. Chairman, addressing the salaries, compression, and career development of our deputy sheriffs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for listening to our report, and I move its adoption.
Senator Dibble, thank you very much, and particularly focusing on mental health and the medical costs that are putting enormous stress on the Department of Corrections and on jails. It's been moved that the Public Safety Subcommittee report be accepted. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, thank you very much, Senator Dibble. Next is Senator Loquacious Wagner on transportation. How are you, sir?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm doing fine. Thank you. First, before I get started in the report, Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank Jason Powell for all the hard work that he's provided the subcommittee. and sorting through a myriad of issues that we face in the Transportation Subcommittee each time we meet. And with that, Mr. Chairman, your Transportation Subcommittee has worked this year to continue to provide oversight over transportation investments and identify areas where additional target investments of transportation resources can provide substantial returns to Virginia's economy. Recently, the expenditure of Commonwealth aviation funds has been brought into question. While this matter remains unsettled, we recommend expressly prohibiting the expenditure of public funds on anything other than capital improvement projects for our airports. Recognizing the will of the people of the city of Virginia Beach, we recommend that the Secretary of Transportation enter into an agreement that will ensure the repayment of funds allocated in support of Hampton Roads Light Rail. We recommend the Secretary redirect up to $20 million in Commonwealth Project Revenue Fund proceeds originally dispersed for that project to the construction of facilities in support of our growing commercial aerospace and unmanned systems industries. In doing so, we will ensure that this funding remains deployed in the region to diversify the economy of Hampton Roads. Compensation, Mr. Chairman, as you know, is the key priority of the Senate Finance Committee. However, the agencies and the Transportation Secretariat do not directly benefit from the general funds provided elsewhere in the budget. Accordingly, we have offered flexibility to agencies such as the Department of Motor Vehicles to generate the revenues necessary to provide the salary adjustments that we have authorized for all state employees. Transparency and accountability in all expenditures is critical to maintaining public confidence in Virginia's transportation program. The proposals of your Transportation Subcommittee focus on and providing diligent oversight, sound fiscal stewardship, and common sense solutions to the challenges we face today. Mr. Chairman, this completes the report of your Transportation Subcommittee, and I would move its adoption.
Senator Wagner, thank you very much for your advocacy on behalf of the Transportation. It's been moved that the Transportation Subcommittee report be adopted. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, and that report is adopted. Thank you very much. Next is Senator Ruff, who is doing Economic Development and Natural Resources. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Committee. Before I begin the report, I want to thank Charles and Jason for their hard work this year. The Economic Development and Natural Resources Subcommittee reviewed the Governor's proposed amendments to the 2016-18 budget with one guiding principle: fiscal responsibility and prudent investment of public resources. Given the Commonwealth's current fiscal restraints and our commitment to prioritizing state police and employee compensation, the subcommittee rejected new spending proposals and focused instead on strengthening established programs with broad support and a track record of success. In the area of economic development, the subcommittee analyzed all performance-based grant programs, and we recommended reducing funding and recovering balances from underutilized incentive programs and projects that are behind schedule. These actions provide an additional $7.1 million into the general fund. Combined with additional general fund savings of $4.4 million identified by the subcommittee, we recommend redirecting the funds to reverse some of the proposed cuts to our most successful economic development programs. The amendments we recommend to you to restore $7.5 million to the $15 million proposed reduction of Go Virginia. This important initiative is at a critical point in its formation, and such a dramatic reduction in funding could seriously jeopardize its success. We also recommended restoring $1.8 million to the Enterprise Zone Grant Program and $1.3 million to the Brownfield Restoration and Economic Development Assistance Fund. In the area of agriculture and forestry, we recommend the restoration of the Governor's proposed cuts to the Reforestation of Timberlands Program, as well as the continued support of the cooperative animal control programs with the USDA. Additionally, we rejected the proposal to increase fees that are targeted directly to forest-related industries. In the area of natural resources, the subcommittee focused its efforts on continuing a cost-effective approach towards meeting our obligations to improve the quality of waters in the Chesapeake Bay and the Southern Rivers. Therefore, we are recommending the release of $8.3 million in the Water Quality Improvement Reserve Fund. When combined with a $30 million line of credit proposed for agriculture best management practice cost-sharing systems, a total investment of almost $40 million is proposed for prudent investment in environmental stewardship. In closing, we believe our recommendations provide a balanced approach to move our economy forward while meeting our constitutional obligations to protect the vital natural resources. This completes the report of the subcommittee, and we hope it will be a pleasure to the City Finance Committee to adopt our amendment. And I so move.
Thank you, Senator Ruff, and your entire subcommittee for the very hard work that you all did. This concludes the Economic Development and Natural Resources Subcommittee. We adopted. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, that committee is adopted. Senator Hanger, Health and Human Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. First, I want to recognize Mike Keaton, our excellent staff member who was up late last night wrapping this up for us, and who has a good demeanor about him in terms of saying, well, you can do that, or if we say something he doesn't like, he said, well, I guess you could do that. I'm pleased to provide the report of the Health and Human Resources Subcommittee. While the revenue shortfalls limits our ability to make any new significant investments, the subcommittee focused its work on improving the behavioral health system, restoring some budget reductions, and fixing other issues that arose during the process. The subcommittee provides very limited funding for any new programs, and in light of the changing landscape in Washington, is recommending efforts to prepare the Commonwealth for any significant changes in the healthcare system, especially our Medicaid program. First, the subcommittee reviewed the proposed funding in the introduced budget for the behavioral health system. We are pleased to see the governor's recognition of the importance of transforming the Commonwealth's community-based system for the mentally ill. Mental health is an issue that at some time or another affects every single one of us, and we will continue to have discussions on how we build a robust system of supports to assist the mentally ill in avoiding costly and unnecessary hospitalizations, encounters with the criminal justice system, and homelessness. The subcommittee recommends adopting most of the behavioral health package, with the exception of two major changes. The first change is an additional $5 million in funding for permanent supportive housing. Housing oftentimes is overlooked in addressing issues within the behavioral health system. Supportive housing provides the additional services to promote stability for mentally ill individuals, and is an important initiative this subcommittee has supported over the last few years. The second change is an additional $2.5 million to improve the salaries of high turnover positions within our system of state mental health facilities. With the increasing demand on our state mental health hospitals in recent years, we must invest in maintaining the appropriate level of highly qualified staff to care for the patients. As a result of subcommittee recommendations, I'm happy to report that the budget includes a total additional investment of over $30 million for behavioral health. I can assure you that these additional investments and the continued work of the SJ 47 Mental Health Commission are moving the Commonwealth forward in this area. The subcommittee recognizes the political change in Washington has completely altered the dynamic in the healthcare arena. As we wait to see what action Congress and the President will take with regards to the Affordable Care Act, and even more importantly to the Medicaid program, we must prepare and plan for potential realities, which include the possibility of a Medicaid block grant. The subcommittee recommends the creation of a joint subcommittee between the Senate Finance and House Appropriations Committees to monitor the debate and actions in Washington and make preparations for potential impact on the Commonwealth. While there are concerns about federal action in health care, there's also potential for opportunities, and a joint subcommittee is appropriate and necessary to respond and make recommendations to the General Assembly. The subcommittee reviewed a variety of issues needing to be addressed, and one of those is related to Medicaid payments for nursing home care. The recent rebasing of their rates resulted in a fairly significant reduction in Medicaid funding to many of these facilities, which care for so many elderly Virginians. The subcommittee recommends an additional $6.5 million in total funds to improve reimbursement for nursing facilities. The introduced budget did fully fund the typical inflationary adjustments. However, the subcommittee determined that additional funding is needed, especially in light of the expansion of Medicaid managed care to cover long-term care services this year. While there are other items that I could mention, I will note one in particular, which is related to creating additional waiver slots for individuals with developmental disabilities. The introduced budget proposes to redistribute the 440 required slots between 3 new redesigned waivers to better align with the needs of the individuals waiting for services. As a result, this redistribution of slots frees up funding, making it available to create additional slots. I am pleased to report that the subcommittee recommends creating 160 new waiver slots. That brings the total number of new slots in fiscal year 2018 to 600, which will help reduce the waiting list. To conclude, let me thank all of the members of the subcommittee for their hard work. Health and Human Resources, as most of you are aware, is an area that the subcommittees can attest is complex, has seemingly endless needs. It is also vital to helping many of our citizens. I sincerely appreciate the time everyone dedicated to this effort. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report for the Health and Human Resources Subcommittee, and I would move this adoption.
Thank you, Senator Hanger. Particularly focusing on behavioral health, it was enlightening to learn that the recent changes in Washington have only been restricted to the uncertainty of health care, so that's very comforting. There's a motion to adopt the Health and Human Resources Subcommittee report. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the next subcommittee report is adopted. Next, we'll hear from Senator Newman on K-12 public education. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to give the elementary and secondary section of the education report. Mr. Chairman, we're very pleased to have Sarah Herzog as our staff for that section. She's done a remarkable job again this year and always with the assistance of April standing in the wings. Mr. Chairman, as you recall, last year we adopted a very good and stable biennial budget that fully funded our re-benchmarking efforts as well as our annual contribution to teacher retirement. It also provided $140 million more in 2018 in additional flexible funding for our school division, half of which was restricted to one-time purposes. In this short session, despite addressing a significant revenue shortfall, our proposed amendments succeed in sparing direct aid to public education from many across-the-board reductions. In addition, as in other areas, compensation was a top priority this year with the goal, at least, of reinstating last year's 2% teacher salary increase, if at all possible. Through a combination of the $55 million the governor had proposed for a 1.5% bonus and about $28 million from that flexible fund we set aside in last year's budget, we are pleased to recommend providing the state's share of funding for a 2% teacher salary increase. The school divisions will have flexibility as to their locally selected effective date at any point during the biennium, including last year. Next, Mr. Chairman, we heard from Southwest and Southside regions about their acute budgetary challenges due to enrollment loss this year. Our report includes funding estimated at $6.9 million this fiscal year as transitional assistance for school divisions that experience a threshold level of 1.5% or more of loss of students from last year, 2016. While the state's overall enrollment is still growing slightly, the majority of our 132 school divisions are managing their declines. And in a few cases, they are projected to be as much as 5% down in a single year. Additionally, our recommendation endorsed a modest amount of proposed new funding, including a $1.3 million for Virginia Instructional Improvement Program and the student growth model as investing in data-driven decision-making. We also endorsed a $1 million for promising teacher residency approaching to the training of highly qualified individuals who are committed to working in our most challenging school divisions. The subcommittee approved most of a handful of targeted reductions in this area as the proposed introduced budget that came from the governor. We also recommended some additional prudent trimming in a few areas. We are fortunate in Virginia to have strong schools overall. The more we delve into this area, the more I appreciate the value of examining the outcome-based evidence on what will work best in each of the community's needs and also for individual students. The subcommittee has a wide range of complex issues before us, ranging from special education, extended school year, dual enrollment, virtual education, and others. These are issues that will require long-term efforts to thoughtfully shape the future of K-12 education in the Commonwealth. Again, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank our subcommittee members, and I look forward to continuing our work in this area that is so central to Virginia's continued high quality of life and economic success. Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to Co-Chairman Norman for higher education.
Thank you, Senator Newman.
Thank you very much, Senator Newman. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could direct your attention to higher education now. The budget we adopted last year was an excellent one for higher education. And the subcommittee prioritized access and completion on both the operating side and for need-based financial aid. We also made significant investments in research to grow our future economy. This year, we find ourselves back to an all too familiar place where a downturn in revenues has necessitated a painful reduction to higher education. It is unfortunate, but it is the hope of this subcommittee that when revenues increase, we can reverse some of these reductions. Higher education is an important part of driving the state forward in economic development and improving the quality of life for our citizens. The introduced budget included a 5% reduction in the second year for most of higher education institutions, excluding Virginia State, Norfolk State, financial aid, and a few minor programs. The introduced budget also contained a one-time general fund reduction equivalent to the non-general funds for the prepayment made to the Virginia retirement system. The subcommittee retains both of those actions, choosing to restore on a very limited basis and proposing a few small additional reductions in this area. As for spending related to higher education, our budget recommendations provide a 2% salary increase for faculty at a cost of almost $17 million. This is our largest spending initiative in higher education. We have repeatedly heard public higher education institutions saying that attracting and retaining outstanding faculty is amongst their highest priorities. Great faculty members not only teach but further research that ends up promoting economic development. Additionally, the classified staff that makes these institutions run will also benefit from a 3% raise proposed for all state employees. Although some institutions have provided increases in the current year, this subcommittee realizes that the institutions require flexibility to meet their specific needs related to compensation actions. The subcommittee also wrestled with the issues raised by some members regarding the cost of education and the autonomy that we have granted our institutions, which will continue. At the heart of these discussions is a real need to better understand the current environment in higher education, the history of the actions that the General Assembly has taken regarding these issues, and any policy choices or recommendations that could be made going forward. The subcommittee has repeatedly grappled with the balance between access and affordability in the terms of cost to Virginia families. For these reasons, the Education Subcommittee will hold a number of meetings this year to further study education related to the complex changes in higher education and to ponder any future actions that may be necessary. In conclusion, the Education Subcommittee's recommendations this year were focused on priorities in employee compensation, minimizing the reductions in elementary and secondary education, and studying the issues related to the future of higher education. For the details of these and other recommendations in the Higher Ed Subcommittee, summary tables and selected language amendment are also attached, and we offer them to the committee for their consideration. As it relates to higher education, poor April probably has the most undesirable job on higher education of having to tolerate my intolerance. And so I thank the subcommittee in April for what they've done, and I would move the adoption of the education subcommittee report.
Thank you, Senator Norman, for your leadership on higher ed, and to Senator Newman for yours on K-12 with the excellent report. There's a motion that the education report be adopted. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Part of my empathetic observations about April is also she has to deal with me on Capitol, so she really gets both barrels of it, and I'm appreciative of her support. The Capital Outlay Subcommittee focus was to minimize further spending in that particular area. As you may recall, in addition to the capital outlay funding in the budget last year, the General Assembly authorized over $2.2 billion for capital outlay projects for higher education institutions, state agencies, and other investments in natural resources and state cultural facilities. In that package, we provided detailed planning for 21 future projects, with the caveat that the planning would begin no earlier than July the 1st of this year. This approach was to limit the number of new projects in the pipeline on top of the already large authorization from last year. For that reason, the subcommittee has removed 4 new detailed planning projects included in the introduced budget. The subcommittee recommends a limited number of pre-planning projects in order for them to move forward within the normal capital outlay process. We also provided additional one-time maintenance reserve funding to address the health and safety concerns associated with a project at the State Police Academy, and redirect project authorization from one project to a more critical project for the Department of Corrections related to an emergency situation. This brings me to the largest capital dollar item in the proposed amendments to this budget. The Department of Alcohol Beverage Control project for a new warehouse and administrative office space was included in the introduced budget for $105 million. This project did not go through the preferred process of pre-planning, detailed planning, and construction authorization. In addition, the subcommittee heard from the ABC and determined that there was still a number of questions that remained unanswered. For this reason, the authorization of this project has been removed in the subcommittee amendments, and the agency has been given authority to conduct pre-planning. Additional language has been included to ensure that ABC will consider a variety of options, including those to examine the ability to remain at its current location for a longer period of time. Again, the Capital Outlay Subcommittee's focus is to make long-term investments that are beneficial to the Commonwealth while using prudent levels of the Commonwealth's debt capacity. I am confident our proposed amendments fulfill this strategic goal. Mr. Chairman, this completes the report of your Capital Outlay Subcommittee, and I hope it will be the pleasure of the entire committee to adopt that report, and I so move.
Okay, thank you, Senator Norman. Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the Capital Outlay Subcommittee report will signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That report is adopted. I turn your attention to the revenue resources, and Chair would entertain a motion that we adopt that report. Is there a second? Motion properly supported. This creates, in addition to recognizing our revenues, it creates the unappropriated revenue, or appropriates the revenue reserve of $40 million that we spoke to earlier. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resources plan signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. We have the Senate Bill 900 in front of us now as amended. Mr. Bowman, any comments?
I would entertain a motion, sir, that we approve.
I would so move.
Senator Hammer moves and Senator Sasslaw seconds the adoption of the Senate budget as we have articulated in the various subcommittee reports. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Shockingly, that motion is passed. Before the committee rises, I do know that each member of the committee would like to join me in expressing our sincerest appreciation to our dedicated staff that I know was, at least one member told me, working to 11 p.m. last night, and some probably got to see the sun come up. So, Betsy, on behalf of the entire committee, I want to extend our sincerest appreciation for your team's dedication and extremely hard work, and you really do an incredible job of making at least this mediocre center look pretty good on occasions. Senator Sasslaw.
To paraphrase another guy in this Capitol Square, greatest staff in the history, greatest staff of all time.
Yeah, but the good news about that, Senator Sasslaw, is it's true. With that, if the finance staff would please join me in extending our appreciation to our finance staff. Anything else to come before us?
I don't think so, Mr. Chairman. Again, I appreciate all the hard work this year. We had a good work ethic with the subcommittees, and I really appreciate that.
All right, with that, the committee will rise, and Senator Carrick will actually bring the truck up.
That's a good idea.
But Bill, thank you. So is that just take down one part? So if you're expecting they are going to
Hey, how are you doing? Good to see you. See you. Dressed down? Were you really?
No, I got that part, but the part that was cut was about if they share a common but you have other criteria. So just,
I thought that, according to what Stuart told me,
I don't know, I was asking what it meant. And then there was, I'll bring it up to you. I'm trying to just going before with just as practicable. If the house funded the biggest part that we're not likely to have the rain.
Hey, Mr. B.
How are you? I'll be in touch with you.